Today I want to tell you about köfte. Something that Turkish cuisine probably is the king of. Why am I saying this? Because we have, together with Burak, counted, guess how much different köfte types with names. I'm gonna write the digits. 3, 6, it's not 36. 3, 6, 8. 368 different types of köfte with its own name, with its original recipe. The köftes that I have discovered and done so far are not counted even in. This is like age-old recipes with proud names, just in the borders of Turkey. And now I'm writing a book about Turkish cooking techniques. Trying what French people did 100 years ago to their cuisine, now we're trying to make it for the Turkish cuisine. Why shouldn't we have our techniques written so that it can be creatively adapted to many other things? While trying to do so, I have many people, many other chefs coming all around the world trying to understand köfte. But I've realized first we have to have the understanding, because Turkish köfte is quite different than an Italian meatball, a Swedish meatball, or a burger bun. For example, when it's many meatballs, burger buns, it's really juicy and nice when it's hot. But if it's like sits there for 20 minutes and you try to chew it, it's not tasty anymore. But the mother's köfte, a köfte in Turkish style, even though you let it sit for half a day and chew it, it will still be fluffy and it will still be very nice. What is the main difference? It comes from its name actually. Köfte. Köfte means beaten and chewed, came into one piece. But usually, more individualistic cultures like Sweden, they are dominantly meat and they are not as much kneaded as Turkish köftes are. Because when you think about a burger, you shouldn't even knead it at all almost. Like you just put some salt and like put the bun and then it's done. The prima donna taste is the meat. But Turkey and Anatolia comes from origins of sometimes wealthiness, sometimes lots of poorness. When the poorness and the wealthiness is lived, some techniques get developed. So you put a little less meat, you add some additives. To increase the taste, you add some other things, and it no more becomes just a meat and a meatball. It becomes something else called köfte, and it's the combination of all these beautiful things becoming something totally different. That's what basically köfte is all about. When I summarize it into a technique, I'm gonna start with the meat first. To take the meat, okay, there's filet steak, there's other, but the best meat is actually the meat that doesn't move. So it shouldn't be a muscle. The meat that is coming from a man. Always men taste better. And closer to the bone, and mixture of fat and meat. And when all these things come together, it's the meat around the ribs. Lots of fat, not moving. The balance is so great. And grinding. As köfte means to be stepped and chewed, it shouldn't be like single grind like a burger meat. What happens in the butcher? You get it in and it's when single grind, it's big holes. When you take it and back and you grind it again, there will be smaller pieces, so less cells. That's really important. If you want to make a köfte for a baby, you have to grind it again 3 times. That's it. A nice köfte would be, like, let's say 20-25% lamb and 75% beef. In the old days, it was just lamb. So it could be a mixture like that. The second prima donna in a mother's köfte is onion. What onion does? Onion has 2 functions. One, with the acid, it breaks down the cells. Secondly, it rottens the meat a bit. And rottening actually, maybe I'm using the word wrong, but aging maybe, makes it a little grayish. And when it turns grayish, as the meat rests, it gets softened. The second function is actually what torf does to the soil. Small little pillows of wetness, because it has also cells that are wet. So, for example, when it's many meatballs, burger buns, it's really juicy and nice when it's hot. But if it's like sits there for 20 minutes and you try to chew it, it's not tasty anymore. But the mother's köfte, a köfte in Turkish style, even though you let it sit for half a day and chew it, it will still be fluffy and it will still be very nice. And this is the function of the onion. You can chop the onion or you can grind it. And when you grind it, it has to be in the big cells of the grinder so that it will have like small pillows and it will also have some water. If you say, Refika, I don't use an onion, or is like 368 different types all use onion? No. But you need something that will rotten the meat a bit. What could be? It could be another acid. It could be a balsamic vinegar or a normal vinegar. It could be yogurt. It could be kefir. Instead of making acid, you can make it more basic and use sodium bicarbonate, which will again rotten. And it will have this weird smell, but it will work. It will soften and break the cells and do the same thing from the other side. So these are some of the things like that in different types of köftes they use. For example, there's İnegöl köfte. If you came to Turkey, you might have eaten such a köfte. You break it and you don't see onion oil. You'll see a meat that is more chewy. That comes from using sodium bicarbonate. Anyways, let's move to the third thing. Third thing is breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are really important for two reasons. First, to increase the amount of whatever we eat. For example, you can put a whole bread in half a kilo of meat. This way, it's more economic. Economy is also really important. You can increase the amount of bread up to 60%. So 40% meat, 60% bread still works. So keep it in mind. Also bread, because it has starch in it, it softens and fluffens the meat and at the same time binds everything together. Normally breadcrumbs are, the dried ones that we use all the time. But normally what we do in the houses, there are stale breads that are left over. We take those stale breads, we put them into some bit of water, it gets softened and we get that bread and include it to the recipe. And suddenly it's very nice. It doesn't become a breadcrumb, but we use the stale bread this way. So instead of bread, because we're talking about technique, what are different things that are put in? Bulgur is very muchly used. We have done some recipes over the years in this channel. And at the same time, for example, from my mom's side, there is really nice potato köfte. What we do is we grind the potatoes and then let them leave their water. When the water sits for a while, at the bottom, you're gonna see an amount of starch gathered at the bottom. So you take the water away and use that starch, and it has this weird, starchy feeling. It's in there. We also put the potato starch, making the outside more crunchy and binding everything together. And potatoes also increase the amount. Or rice. Rice is very much used. I have this kadın budu köfte recipe. If I haven't done it, have I done it for the English channel? We haven't done it for you guys. We must do it sometimes. It's to die for köfte. Very nice. Again, 40% meat, 60% rice. So good. Then let's move to the spices. Spices are really important. Cumin is one of the leaders. I give the list of the spices that I use here, but I also have köfte meatball mixture, actually in bigger jars right now. You can buy them through Etsy if you like, and I'll tell you what we have in it. Breadcrumbs, sea salt, cumin, hot pepper, black pepper, a bit of garlic, a bit of coriander, nutmeg, and a bit of thyme and mint. That's an ideal great mixture. So spices are really important. And some spices, for example, putting cinnamon to meatball is more like a Greek thing. Turkish Greeks used to do it a lot. Turkish Armenians add a lot of onions. So, köfte is a mixture of the togetherness. And as we say, we cannot summarize köfte as just meat, just onion, just spices. It's a mixture and it's something totally different. It's what Turkey and Anatolia is all about. We have a lot of things from our Turkish Greeks. We have a lot of things from our Turkish Armenians. Being Turkish, it's not a nation. It's not a type of blood, type of skin. Being Turkish is being the mixture of all these, our traditions and things. So I just wanted to include that. Anyways, another thing which is important is another binder. Another binder is eggs. Egg is really important for several reasons. It binds, and it also is a really good emulsifier. Emulsifying meaning being able to mix water and oil together. When you put an egg and mix it, knead it really well, then everything gets mixed really well and you get that oil and water captured in it. When oil and water are captured together, emulsified together, when you put the köfte on the side for 2 hours, it doesn't go dry and stiff. That's the basic and very important difference of Turkish köfte. Another thing, as you know, yolk of the egg is very tasty. So you're adding at the same time a really good sauce to the köfte. Another thing is fresh greens. Fresh greens, it could be mint, it could be dill, it could be parsley, it could be coriander. Again, if you go to the Armenian side, it's mostly coriander. If you go to some Aegean side, dill takes a lot of place, but mostly and all the time we use maydanoz, which is the parsley. Parsley is very nice. We finely chop the parsley. What I do, because I love to use the stems and don't throw anything, we cut the stems very thinly and add the stems much before, knead them along, add the green sides of the leaves later on, so that the greenness is fresh through kneading. Last but not least is adding a bit of oil. Why? For some of the spices gets opened in water, some of the spices get opened themselves, let's say, in oil. The fat from the meat sometimes is not enough melted to get those, so a bit of oil helps everything mixing up. One final thing, köfte has to be kneaded really well. When you knead the köfte very well, it becomes more chewy. If you don't knead the köfte well, for example, when you make a kebab or when you make a burger bun, it's almost as if it falls down. That's for those köftes. Household is medium, and there are different types of inegöl köftes and other köftes that is very elastic. So depending on the köfte type, you increase the kneading. But for your mom's köfte, at least 5 to 8 minutes of kneading is needed. Then making the shape. If it's a ball, it's very small usually, but normally we press our 3 fingers to the meat and it has that wiggly side, so all the corners become more crunchier, nicer. Or it could be in the shape of a finger, depending on whether you want to eat it cold or hot, it changes. But it could be something like a small round thing, like mother's köfte is fluffy inside, etc. So when to cook it, we have to have a really high heat. You can do it on a non-stick, but I don't like using Teflon. You can do it on a ceramic pan, or you can do it on a cast iron. Cast iron are the best. When you cook a steak, for example, on a pan, what you have to do is you put it on one side, let it sit for a while, and then turn it on the other side, and you cook it on the other side. And that's it. But for köfte, it's quite different. What we have to do, we have to turn it all the time. We put it on the pan. The first time it might stick a bit, wait for a while, then hop, take it and then turn it, and then continue turning it in every other minute. This way, what happens, different from the steak, steak's fats are like on certain places, but this is like all mixed. The fats get melted with the heat, but we don't want it to go to the pan, so we have to turn it all the time for it to stay, and that sizzling fat cooks the köfte much better, actually a little faster as well, and it prevents it from drying as well too. To my twice grinded meat, I add my grated onions, then add my breadcrumbs or stale bread. Then I add the köfte spice mix, then some salt, black pepper and 1 egg. I knead it really well. Then I add some olive oil and vinegar and knead some more. After kneading for a while, I finally add my parsley and knead a little more. Then to shape it all, I wet my hands, give the shape, put my 3 fingers for more corners in the köfte, and then it's ready for frying. Ideally, if the köfte sits for about 2 hours, it's gonna be miraculous. I heat my cast iron pan. For the köfte not to stick, it's important for it to be well seasoned. I put my köftes, let it fry for a while. After it starts to change a bit of color, I turn them. Then when the other side also changes its color, I turn it back and forth until the middle of the köfte is also well done. Voila! My köfte is ready. If you want some more taste, you can add a bit of tomatoes and a bit peppers, and they will go really good together. So that's basically it. When we think about the meat, our street sellers do also a trick. They have an added ingredient, and knowing from the Hannibal Lecter story, the most tasty thing are the cheeks of the animals. So they also include cheek meats. So that's basically making the köfte. In Turkey, we eat köfte with 3 different kinds of peas. P is potatoes, P is piyaz, P is pilav. Luckily, we have 3 of the recipes on the channel: pilav, patates, and piyaz. So you can go to any of these recipes and have the ingredients together with köfte. I might have talked too much on one recipe, but this could be something that it might be a part of you all the time. Köfte is a lifesaver. For example, on the day that if we don't have a lot of job, what we do, we fry a kilo of köfte and then we let it sit for a while and then put it in the freezer. And each day, for example, I come home on a tired day, I take like 4 köftes, put it in my air fryer, voila, I get my perfect köftes 5 minutes later. Or I would wrap 5 köftes each and then take 1 in the morning, and then when I come back, fry it on the pan. So these things are some of the things that you can do with köfte. And small child would also love it, big ones, old ones, everyone would love a köfte. Also, eating a lot of meat could be a thing. So Turkish style of eating köfte adds lots of more things to the meat. So we eat less meat, so less carbon footprints as well in another sense. If you haven't come to Turkey and eaten köfte, believe me, you haven't eaten one of the best meatballs of the world. Take care, love you guys so much, thank you for the patience. Hope you love this video. If you have loved this video, please show it to us by pressing like, and if you want to have a small thanks, that would be so lovely. I read everything you write and I'm so happy about that. Thank you.